And again, if you look at issues like climate change or healthcare or infrastructure, education funding, or getting kids literate by the time they're in first grade, those are all critical ingredients, we think, of a more functional economy. And if government doesn't function well, then your economy is going to suffer. So our basic premise is that businesses should be concerned about changing the political process, opening the process up, having more competition, more voices. So one of the issues that we think companies could become more interested in is something called ranked choice voting. And Sarah, why don't you describe how that issue works and why that is an element of a more competitive economy?
Sure. Well, this is a narrative that we love for business, which is the idea of competition. Competition in the economy leads to better products, better services. The same thing, better competition in the political process could help new ideas come into play, is going to require whoever is going to win to do a better job of appealing to a broader set of interests. And in fact, we a lot of times talk about them sort of fighting over the middle where most of the voters are. So with ranked choice voting, instead of picking one candidate from a list, you get to rank your choices. And so this encourages people to show up to the polls when they think, gosh, my number one choice doesn't have a chance, why even show up? Or gaming out your choices because you're like, I really want to vote for this person, but if I vote for them, isn't that a vote for this other person? You don't have to worry about that anymore. Just rank your choices. And basically, if your first choice has too few votes, then your vote goes to the second person, and so on until you just keep moving out the votes until somebody has a majority. So you end up with a true majority candidate, which is the other thing. Instead of having just a plurality winner, you get a real majority winner.
Yeah.
So you can imagine, too, where this changes the behavior of candidates. First of all, it reduces the toxicity of the elections. You'll even see where candidates are now saying, like, rank me number one and my competitor here number two because we're similar, or vice versa. So they're starting to reduce the toxicity of the elections, and they're needing to figure out how to appeal to a broader swath of voters. You can't afford to alienate people with these polarizing positions. So when people think about polarization and gridlock in politics, ranked choice voting is an excellent solution for that, and it fits so much like with the idea of competition and why it works in markets and it works in politics. So that's a reform that we're pretty excited about. And back to Richard's point too, just about talking about democracy and the principle of democracy as being valuable in itself to society and to the business sector. When you look at countries that become more lowercase d democratic, where they are allowing people to vote and engage in the political process, and to hold their governments accountable, you also start to see improved economic performance, reduction in corruption, all these kinds of things in terms of better outcomes for society. In America, it was at the it was actually announced, it was the 2016 report, it was announced in January 2017. The Economist downgraded America from a full democracy to a flawed democracy. That's a real problem. First of all, it's America, right? I thought we were like the leading democracy. And the fact that The Economist of all magazines would have that finding is pretty stunning. And we also then see outcomes in terms of health of mothers and children, and educational outcomes, and air and water and all kinds of things that people care about. We can measure these things and we can see that we're getting worse outcomes. And then we also see a lack of trust in politicians. The ratings for Congress are, at near historic lows. They have been low, and every now and again they go up a little bit, but they're pretty terrible across the board. Like, this isn't acceptable. We should be having candidates that we're excited about voting for. Nobody should be holding their nose at the polls, and that we should be seeing increasingly better outcomes on all of these policies. And it's this dysfunction in government and failure to hold politicians accountable that is the problem. And the way we elect people, and by changing those incentives, we're going to change their behaviors and we're going to get better outcomes over time.
So I like your ranked choice voting reform that you're looking at. I'm curious to see how far that goes.